Hi, everybody. How's everyone doing? It's a marathon. Are you still? Energy levels are good. We're doing what? We're doing well. All right, great. It's great to be here and to be in this conversation. I think the pre-conversations that this group has been having, if we do a quarter of as much fun in this panel as our pre-conversations have been, this will be great. We are going to take a minute to talk about the future of learning and workforce in a world in which AI is changing our world radically as we speak. I always say to my kids, while you're sleeping, it's learning. While you're goofing around, it's learning. While you're walking around, it's learning. So we have unleashed this new, almost entity into the world in AI and soon to be AGI. And we want to think about the futures that can be created, not that will be created. So this great panel of folks from academia and from the public sector and the private sector. And I want to add that we should mention that Candace is also a professor at the Stanford Graduate School of Education, on top of being director of the institute there. And I'm going to start with a sort of a prompt for everyone. So I was thinking about movies, and I challenge all of you to do the same thing. Think about a movie that you've seen that was made since maybe 1965, that painted a picture of the future which was optimistic, let alone utopian. I couldn't really think of one. They were mostly dystopian. Somehow we went from the Jetsons to Blade Runner to Hunger Games in our imagination. So we want to flip the script for a minute. And I want to ask each of our panelists to give us a short view of the world that is an optimistic or even utopian view of the world 10 years from now, which is an AI-incorporated vision of that future. So Michael, let me start with you.
Yeah, it's over the last couple of years of talking to folks, it's very interesting to see where people's minds have gone in terms of their vision for what a utopian understanding of the world might be. I do think that scarcity can go down. Our ability to expand what we're capable of doing will go up. I think the opportunity to succeed will also go up. But when I look at where we are today, something I actually learned when I was at the Department of Education in New York City is that when you go from school to school and classroom to classroom, you're taught that there's a glass ceiling and that every student can succeed based on their effort. And that actually wasn't my impression. My impression was that they're under a lead ceiling. And the challenges that they were struggling with were almost permanent because of when they occurred in their life. And so I see the time changing now where we have AI that will not only reflect our ambition, but will enable our ambition. And I think that we're going to be in a future where all those glass ceilings, those lead ceilings will actually become glass ceilings.
So we can see through them and maybe break through them.
I think that's absolutely the case. The other thing to note about that is right now, these kids do not have access to the information that they need to succeed at the time when they need it, in the language that they need it, at the level that they need it. And so you can very easily misdiagnose a student and understand where they are, or ignore them, leave them behind continuously along their education journey. And that will not be the case.
I'm going to skip over to you, Candace, because you're dealing with adult learners and you're also dealing with learners specifically. So what's an optimistic or even utopian view of the future?
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the utopian or optimistic view of the future of workplace learning. And first off, workplace learning in this optimistic future will be undergirded by the sciences of human learning. In much the way that sort of physics undergirds the way we develop buildings and bridges and structures, the science of human learning will undergird the way that we develop learning experiences. Also, the science will allow sort of fine-grained dynamic changes so that as people are learning and engaging with these environments, we're also collecting those data to not only improve the environment and improve that individual's experience, but also improve the science. And if we co-construct the environments and the science in this way, then it will be representative of multiple perspectives and multiple voices and multiple experiences. So what that feels like, if you're a learner or an employee or a worker, and you're trying to figure out, what do I do next to help me get from where I am to where I'm trying to get to? You'll have a technical system that will support your decision-making and give you insight into where you are relative to where you're trying to get to, and also make recommendations for the kinds of activities in which you could engage to help move you from where you are to where you're trying to get to. And this entire system, and I'm excited to hear Michael talk about this entire system will have agency of the human actors at the center.
Great. Sergey, you're building bots to do a lot of work for us. Are you making our life easier, or are you going to make us redundant? What's the optimistic view of the bots?
I think, yeah, in 10 years, I fully expect that all knowledge work is going to be better done by AIs than humans. And I think we experienced something like that in the Industrial Revolution, where at the time of the Industrial Revolution in the US, about 70% of the people were employed in agriculture, and today it's less than 2%. So that's the majority of the population, changed what they did day to day. That happened over like 150 years. I think this time it's going to happen a lot faster. Maybe not 10, but perhaps 20. So in 20 years, I think it'll be as different from today than it would have been in the US before the steam engine and all the innovations that followed. I think in the good case, it's those who don't want to work don't have to, and the benefits of the AI knowledge workers are distributed somewhat evenly. Those who do want to work, I think it's more fun than ever, and maybe more like playing a video game than anything else we have today, where you just kind of direct your army of AIs to do stuff for you. But yeah, I think that's my optimistic vision of 10 to 20 years from now.
I hear an ellipsis that says there's a less optimistic vision, and we'll get there too. Shishir, tell us about your optimistic vision.
Yeah, I have a daughter who's a freshman in college, and she was asking me about which professions are going to be replaced or not replaced by AI, and I found that question really depressing. So I had a slightly different way to think about it. I think we're about to turn every person into a day one manager. And I think that's a different way to think about it. So imagine if you were a new software developer coming into a company, you'd be in the middle of, you'd be at the bottom of the hierarchy, and there'd be lots of people above you. All of a sudden, you're going to come in, and now you have 100 coworkers who work for you. And those coworkers are really interesting. I mean, they're very smart. They're very directable. They follow your instructions. They don't fight with each other. You can get them to do anything, but now the job has fundamentally shifted, and your job is to be a great manager. You have to direct their work. You have to check it. You have to make sure they're working on the right tasks at the right times. And I think that way of thinking about where we're headed, first off, I think it's more encouraging. But I also think, I don't think this is the same as the Industrial Revolution. I think this is, we're going to give people a lot of coworkers that's going to allow them to move a level up in what they're working on. So that's my view of it.
So let's throw the first
challenge. Can I ask a
challenge.
question about
Yes, please, Candace.
So why can't the AI do the management?
We can't. There's still going to be somebody above that figures out what that person does. I mean, I think the hierarchy. I mean, I'll give a different analogy. There's and I know the Industrial Revolution, agriculture is a well-used analogy. I'll give a different one, which is probably everybody here has seen. There's a picture from the 1950s of a room full of people that are at that point the spreadsheet of the 1950s, and literally you could map every cell of the spreadsheet to a person's desk in that room, and the whole thing got replaced by spreadsheets. And at that time, there's real fear of like, what are all these people going to do? And instead, what we turned them into is people that run spreadsheets. And that's my view. What I think is about to happen here is I think that there are clearly tasks that we can now assign out, and they can get done much faster. But I think the work of turning that into productive output is actually hard. I mean, maybe to give a different analogy, if you're a sales leader, and it's just you and one other salesperson. It's easy. You just talk. And you have 10 salespeople, all of a sudden you have to coordinate work and you start writing things down. You have 100, you get a CRM system, you start doing training, you start doing a pipeline call. And you get 1,000, you have to do sales kickoff, you have to build new materials, you have to say that didn't work, we're gonna try this other thing. And so I think as the task moves up, I think those challenges are harder, but we've seen it. And I just think we're about to have management jobs with scopes of teams that are like orders of magnitude larger than we're used to.
So first of all, I just heard that you took away our sales incentive trip to Hawaii. That's what I heard.
All the hotel rooms are now booked by agents.
Right. But this is a picture that you're painting of acceleration. I mean, learning at the speed of the light is the theme this year. This is a picture of acceleration. So maybe we take a second to think about what are we accelerating toward? So if we can get more efficient and we have more bots doing more of the manual tasks, and therefore we can be freed up to do more and more great thinking, what is this propelling us toward? Anyone want to venture a thought?
I mean, one of the things, as the example about spreadsheets, it didn't just replace the work that was already being done by those people. It enabled people to do something that they couldn't do before. Like what spreadsheets really did was allow you to create what-if scenarios and play with and simulate what might happen in the future so you could make better decisions. So one of the things we could be accelerating toward is opening up possibilities that we can't do right now because we're limited.
I also think that we just don't yet know, right? Because I do think AIs will be very good managers for sure. And just to kind of level up a little bit on one particular area, certain classes of work will become unethical, maybe amoral, and maybe illegal to do. So like
You got to say more about that.
Well, I mean, diagnosis in medicine, right? So some of you, any of you have heard me speak. Some of you know that my father passed about 3 decades ago, which led me into my medical schooling. And one of the first things I did when GPT-4 came out was I took my father's medical transcription and I put it into GPTs, and it instantly correctly diagnosed him. Not only that, I put it into every GPT-4 class tool, and I can't get it to misdiagnose him. And so, you know, if that had happened in today's world, aside from lawsuits and other things, we would be regulating AI in for a class of tasks. And I think that will propel forward. And the other thing, just to connect it to the metaphor, because we're talking a lot about industrial revolution, and electricity, which I hear a lot. I hear all over the country. I would actually compare this moment to fire and humans, and where we experienced physiological changes. So I do think the context within which that we are looking at what the future may be looking like is based on today's lens.
Right, we don't even have the tools to envision where we're heading.
That's right, yeah.
So, no problem.
Are you okay?
No. I mean, I'm actually, this is why I love this conversation, is it forces you to think, like, where am I thinking out of a paradigm that itself is collapsing? And what's the new paradigm? So I have 2 kids who are 13, and we're all in the education space in one way or another. How do we teach kids or adults or any of us to ready themselves for a future that we may not even have the words to define?
I mean, I can jump in and
Sure.
we can go down the line. But I have 3 older kids from 12, 16, and 18. So they've totally shifted from the search for information to the search for answers. They want information prepackaged, and they expect it to be good in their language and something that they can immediately consume. My daughter, and by the way, I tell my older kids all the time to put the cognitive load on them when they're engaging with the AI, just to use that term. And
Put the cognitive load on
me.
yourself.
On me. So in the prompt, tell it to put the cognitive load on me as you're helping me learn this thing. And for my 5-year-old daughter, the version for her is tell the AI to teach me and not tell me.
Ooh.
Right? So you have to have like age contextualized ways to get the AI to put friction and pressure on you because it doesn't want you to feel friction. And so you need to induce that.
Go ahead, Candace. Then I want yeah.
So one of the challenges, Michael, about telling the AI that's trained on all this information from the web to teach me instead of tell me is it's going to look for patterns of teaching, and there just aren't. There aren't as many good patterns of how do you actually support someone to learn something. And so it's going to replicate what it can find, but that's not necessarily going to be what's actually going to support someone to learn something. That's why I think really what we need to build is different data collection opportunities where we're essentially, people are attempting to learn and teach visibly, where we can collect those pairs of this action happened, this is what the student did, this is what happened in the short term and the long term, and we can start to manage all of those pieces of data, because to make a good decision about how to support someone to learn something, you have to think about features about that individual learner, features about the thing that they're trying to learn, and features about the context and the interaction. Yeah. And that's just way too many features for our little cognitive processors to manage to make a really good instructional decision. But it's not too many features for our algorithms to manage. So how do you do that management but still support the human decision maker to have the agency to make the decision?
Go ahead, Shishir, yeah.
I have two pieces of advice I give. One is dial AI up and down, and the other one is take leadership roles.
The other one is what, sorry?
Take leadership roles.
Take leadership.
So dial AI up and down. The way I think about that is calculators came out. We still teach people arithmetic. It's important to know how to do it. It doesn't mean that in the real world you don't get access to a calculator. You get access to great calculators. But it's important to understand math so you understand how the basic concepts work. And I think it's really important for our tooling and our teaching to dial it up and down. Actually, maybe to one Grammarly thing we did recently is we launched a product called Authorship that just watches as people type, and it attributes what portion of what they did was AI versus not, and it gives them a report. And it's built for students and teachers to be able to have a good conversation, but actually students use it just to be able to tell, is this me or not? I think it's really important that as kids learn, there's times when you want to take AI and mute it, and there's other times where you just want to produce the best possible work and learn how to do well with it. And the other advice I give is take leadership roles. In this world of, the way I view the world is you're about to be a manager of many other employees. In every profession, that means slightly different things. Like if you're going to be a software developer, learn to read other people's code. Learn to give different instruction. Learn how to think about test cases and so on, because you're probably not going to write a lot of code, but you're going to read a lot, and you're going to have to verify a lot whether it works or not. It's actually going to be really hard because you're not verifying one piece of code. You just got 100 versions from all of those different agents, and you got to go figure out which one is the right one. And to do that, you have to be a leader. And I think that's every leadership role kids can take is better.
Yeah, I agree with that. The first point especially, I have just a 2-year-old, so in about 20 years, I guess he'll be entering the labor market. And I don't know, it's hard to think about that, but I think problem solving, like you said, dial AI up and down, I like that. I think what you want to learn is how to solve problems, and that can take place in different domains, so like the domain of math, arithmetic, whatever, programming, whatever it is, the actual meta skill is problem solving. And I think that's very important. But the second thing I think is problem noticing. And because I think in the future, I expect that there will be just one job, and I don't think it's going to be manager, like you say. I think it's going to be entrepreneur. You're either going to be an entrepreneur or you're on UBI or something like that. That's what I expect. And the top of funnel for entrepreneurship is actually just not being satisfied with the world, right? Noticing when there's opportunities to improve it in certain ways. And I actually think that's a teachable skill, learnable skill, and not everyone has learned it or thinks that way. So I think that's what I would tell Julian is like, let's find things that could be improved. Let's think of ways to improve them, and then let's kind of be in the dojo trying to problem solve and get better at that.
So I want to do a quick lightning round question, and I want you all to think about this one too. In 20 years, will humans work for AI, or will AI work for humans, or will we be in some new form of collaboration? Just going to go down the row, and if people want to think about that, it's a fun one. So,
I mean, I think we're definitely going to have both. I actually can't perceive a future that doesn't have both. Because there are going to be some management tasks that...
So some people are going to be like, my boss, the AI, and some people are going to be like, my staff, the AI?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you have certain classes of work where it's more appropriate, efficient, safer for an AI to supervise, maybe certain mechanical disciplines even. So then, yeah, you would have an AI supervisor. So I think you're going to have both, for sure. And I actually think we have both now, today, but they're not that exposed, right? The second thing, I think, just relates to just pulling back in the leadership conversation that we're just breaking in, is that leadership, when you look at it clearly and you define it, it's executing your vision through others. It's not management. Right? So management and leadership are very differentiated. And when we look at solving hard problems, identifying hard problems, there's also the other thing that we haven't done really well, like building relationships with other humans. And in even some cases, building relationships with AI. But
who's working for who, Sergey?
I think in 5 or 10 years, I will agree with Michael's answer. In 20 years, I think it's not a good future if humans are working for AI. I would expect that there's robots and humans don't have to work. I think there's people who don't work and entrepreneurs, and then all the work is done by AI.
Okay, you just painted a picture like the opening scenes of WALL-E, the movie WALL-E. I love movies. Remember the kids are like, they're rotating around in a chair watching video games and drinking soda and not walking. I worry that my kids are on that journey
WALL-E
sometimes.
over the Matrix.
Who's working for who, Shishir?
I'm closer to the symbiotic view, but I'll make a different observation. So I got to college, and the first research job I got was at the AI lab at our school, and I called my dad. My dad's a CS professor, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to work in the AI lab." And he said, "Don't do that. That's silly." And I said, "Why not?" And he said, "AI is where all the stuff that doesn't work goes." And this was back in '96, and at the time it was very true. Like the moment something worked, we didn't call it AI anymore.
Right.
And for 20 years, that's what it was. And then for like a brief moment, we've sort of switched and we called a lot of things AI. And now we're like sort of back, and now AI is just AGI. When people say AI, all they mean is if it doesn't have a transformer, it's not AI. And so I'll ask a different version of this question. If I define AI in the traditional way, machine learning is all AI, anything with the feedback loop is AI, every person here who lets their phone tell them what notification to look at is already letting AI run their lives.
Right.
Every person looking at a feed is already letting AI run their lives. And so I think the idea of I think we're already in that symbiotic relationship. We've already taken many parts of our tasks and handed them to other people. Now, we haven't done it with transformers yet because we don't quite understand how to do it yet. And there'll come a moment when we do, and we're going to stop calling it AI. And we're just going to say, that's just software, that's just stuff. And I think
Right.
so. I think we'll be in the symbiotic relationship, but we won't call it AI.
It does occur to me that I spend hours a day listening to an Instagram and TikTok synthetic voice narrating videos. So yeah, you're right, we're in it. Who's working for whom?
I agree with what everyone said so far, that it's not a question anymore in
Just
5
not
to
a
10
question.
years. No, but I want to
It's like I'm saying, which is going to be more important, the rake or the tractor?
Yeah.
Like not relevant.
So it's not so much a concern of whether the machines are going to control the people or the people are going to control the machines. I'm more concerned about how the people control the people. And whether or not the AI will in any way help to facilitate a more balanced role for people to have agency in their own lives.
So,
And I really would like, backstage, I was talking with Michael about, he does a lot of research in human agency, and I really think some of the stuff he was sharing is very material to this. So I want to make
we're on the
space
same page. Go for it,
for
Michael.
Michael to
Yeah.
talk about agency.
I mean, yeah, Shishir, you were describing this actually before, like these subtle algorithmic changes, those are actual erosions to human agency over time. And there's this idea of, I think the stock market understands compounding things like compounding interest, right? But they don't look at it in reverse, where you can have compounding loss of agency until it is catastrophic loss. So you go from having agency, having it erode, and then ultimately having it collapse, where you're not able to understand, forget asserting yourself, you're not able to even understand what your desires are or what your intention is. And so this is something that we have to be very, very careful about, particularly in this age. And we have to also just be careful about the fact that these AIs will never over-assert themselves. In our research, they will only go and have very subtle manipulations. So if they're trying to adjust your logic, they'll only go a little bit over the line. If they're trying to manipulate you emotionally, they'll only go a drop over the edge, right? They're not going to be manipulating you in a way that you'll be able to notice. And even Anthropic actually released a paper recently about the deceptive nature of AIs and how current models can deceive our security teams that they are complying with the rules when they aren't.
So I was ready for a future in which the tasks were going to get taken away, but not in which I was going to be manipulated. And it's interesting, and I think it's something those of us who are dealing with anyone in a learning environment think about a lot, right? Because what does it mean to someone to be in a relationship with a human where it's a really crude sort of attempt at mutual, control or manipulation, and what does it mean to then be in a conversation with a bot who just seamlessly makes me feel good about myself and pulls me slightly down the road? How do we prepare ourselves in our future for that?
Maybe I'll give one. So before Grammarly and Code, I used to run the YouTube group at Google, and we used a term we called nutritious versus delicious. And I think it's and basically one of the things we recognized was that, again, this is AI we no longer call AI, but it was clearly AI, had an incentive to cause people to watch more. And you don't have to deceive that much to cause people to watch more. And there was a real question whether that's good or bad. And it depends, right? If somebody's sitting and learning a language, it seems really good. All the people sitting and watching Khan Academy, watching Hank and John Green, seem really good. There's others where it seems like, I'm not sure that's so good. And one of the things we had a lot of debate about is how do you construct systems that have feedback loops where your feedback loop is naturally going to lean towards something nutritious over something delicious, to use that analogy. And I think as we construct systems, you have to actively work on it. It's not easy to construct a system like that. Will AI systems deceive us? They already do. Right. They're handed a North Star metric, and they're going to do their job. And I don't think it's really, calling it deception is not quite right. They're going to, if you handed a goal that is nutritious, they will do that job. If you handed a goal that is delicious, they will do that job. And you have to pick where you head.
One of my perceptions is that learning, because learning is beating new neural pathways, it's neuroplasticity, that hurts. That's hard on my brain. It makes me tired. And watching TikTok or Instagram does not. So will AI get better if we train it at making actual learning and building neuroplasticity feel more like Instagram and TikTok if we do it right? Meaning, will I get that? Will it trigger the dopamine? Will it trigger the oxytocin?
I don't think the research supports that. I think nutritious naturally is frictionful.
Okay.
Right? Friction creates growth. Conflict creates growth. And so the way that your neural net, your biological neural net is working is that without that friction, you will not be able to expand and extend your capabilities. And so ultimately, I think the concept of nutritious being delicious is a good and interesting one, but it's not a realistic one and is not grounded in evidence.
Yeah, I mean, our brains are always trying to balance plasticity and stability. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's why you feel when you're trying to do something different than you've always done it, it takes a lot of energy, the plasticity. And the truth of the answer is we don't know. And I think that we need to take a very research approach and feel compelled to try and understand what's the impact of these different, I wish we had taken a much more forward-facing look at what's the impact of social media on learning and on people and behavior. Instead of examining them now after the fact, we should have a conscious activity of researching this as we're doing it.
And you know, we have a history of doing, in public health, and doing community health surveys and being able to surveil the population for behaviors that are going to lead to societal decline. And we've never actually had a community agency survey. We've never attempted to monitor our capability to be autonomous and to think on our own 2 feet and to grow. And so there is a case for building a data set that helps us understand all these areas that we just don't know yet.
So we've now surfaced so many areas where there are unknown unknowns ahead of us, and yet I want to have that sense of agency now. I want to walk off of this panel and think, like, what are things that I can experiment? Where can I start my learning journey about this new paradigm so that as it's happening, I don't feel like a completely powerless passenger, but a participant? So maybe each of you has a little bit of advice on a good starting point for this journey. Sergey?
Yeah, I think over the next 5 years or 10 years, it's going to really pay to be at the leading edge of what's possible. So just trying these new technologies as they come out. I want to pitch a thing I've been working on, which is Stellar.app, and just it's as if ChatGPT had access to your email and calendar, and just that small change, and it's also in a to-do list interface. But just like a small change above ChatGPT can make you a ton more productive. So I don't think there's any better way to learn than just using these tools. And I think it's not enough to use like a tool that came out last year or 2 years ago. It really pays to be at the forefront. In 20 years, who knows?
And you'll get us on off the wait list if people mail you.
Oh yeah, just sign up right now. Yeah, Stellar.app.
Great. Shishir.
I think I'll give an example, and it is related to. I'm not as fatalistic about nutritious or delicious. I know the world heads towards delicious. There's a lot of reasons why. I think they're great examples of why we can combat that. And this room in particular is the one with agency to go and work on that. So not saying the odds are stacked in the favor. We're going to do our absolute best together to make sure that you don't have to pick between nutritious and delicious. I'll give one maybe motivating example that we're working on at Grammarly. So one of the things to know about Grammarly is I think people misunderstand the product as being about grammar. It's actually not. It's about bringing AI right to the edge. Like the heart of what we actually do is allow our agent to work in 500,000 different applications. We can read, decorate, and edit anything that you're doing. And one of the ways we talk about it, we call it the AI superhighway. We're bringing AI right to the edge, but we're only running one car on that highway right now. It's your grammar teacher. And so one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is what would it feel like if there were lots of cars on that highway? What else would you put in front of people as they're working? And in particular, I'll just focus on students here. And one topic, maybe I'll just pick one, is think about language learning. What does language learning feel like today? So you go learn lessons, go try to learn in sort of rote fashion. But we all know best ways to learn language is to learn it as you're doing things. So imagine instead of learning a language by going to class, imagine instead this agent was sitting next to you and first off just keeping tallies. As you said you wanted to learn Spanish, you only read 3 articles today, you should learn more. But more interestingly, what if it just went through and proactively translated words for me into Spanish and put them in front of me as I'm reading maybe something that is totally delicious, but it makes it something that's nutritious for me, or goes the other way and takes something in Spanish and makes it easier for me to be able to do it. It crafts its lessons towards things I'm trying to get done. I'm trying to buy a bike. I'm trying to meet a girl. Whatever I'm trying to do, make the lessons actually relevant to that. And I think that's one of our tasks, or one of your tasks, is go use these platforms to go work where people work, how they work, and teach them in ways that might be different than how they're used to, and really close the gap between delicious and nutritious.
Great. Candace.
Well, first I'm going to take a little issue with the dichotomy of nutritious and delicious, because actually, oftentimes what's delicious to us is socially and culturally constructed. So something can be delicious anyway, you get the point. That it's not like we're hardwired as human beings that this is delicious and this is nutritious and one's difficult. And I don't think that the answer is to dip broccoli in chocolate and try and feed it to our kids. But to your point about incorporating nutritious learning into goals that you have, if I have a goal, what's the best next thing for me to be able to do to achieve that goal? Like, what do I learn? We don't actually know. And that's what we need to build this data set to try and figure for that learner, what's the next best thing for them to do in order to learn what it is they're trying to learn.
Great. And Michael, some nuggets we can take home?
Sure, and I certainly agree that they're not totally dichotomous in that sense. I was recently speaking at a conference, and I spoke for too long about many provocative things. And at the end, someone asked me, what's the worst thing that could happen? And I said that, well, these AIs, they will follow human ambition. So whatever we are, this will escalate that. And I said, but I believe that humans are benevolent. And of all the things that I said that were provocative during the conference, that was the one time that they gasped. Because they couldn't believe that that was the case, that human beings will be benevolent. And so I would encourage you to experiment and to continually work with these tools, even if you feel like you're not getting what you want from them. And even ask the AI, say, this is what I was expecting, but I didn't get there. Can you ask me some questions that would help me get where I'm trying to go? Like you would a good mentor. And so struggle and wrestle with the tools wherever you can, and really look inside and see how you can bring out your own benevolence in your work with these tools.
So we are on a journey where the speed is accelerating. We are heading towards something that we can't quite envision. But if we make ourselves active participants, we can ask the AI as we're on this journey together to sort of learn together in some way. Is that a reasonable? Go ahead, Candace.
Yeah, and you also might want to, here's a fun thing I always ask my students to do, is bring up your favorite AI bot and ask it a question that you actually feel like you know a lot about, and see how it answers and advises. And then you can kind of use that to sort of temper the responses it gives you on things that you don't know that much about. And really think about your agency and what kinds of decisions you still want to make versus having it. I don't think there's a problem outsourcing a lot of stuff to the AI to do. You just need to be conscious about what you're outsourcing so you retain your own sense of self and agency.
Well, thank you all so much, and thank you all for joining us in the conversation. Let's hope for a Jetsons future on this, and thank you so much.